Okay, let's get started. I'd like to welcome you today to Getting More Bang from Your Bucks in Marketing and Advertising. This is Chris DeCenso at Growth Strategy Partners. I'll give you a little intro in a bit, but first I'd like to introduce Kenyon Gleason from the National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers, who will say a few words. Ken, you there?
Yes, I am, Chris. Thank you so much. Want to say welcome to everybody. Thanks for being on the call today. Appreciate you taking some time to listen in. We are excited about a great lineup of webinars we have throughout the coming year, and want to encourage you to make sure you stay tuned to the NASGW Insights newsletter, to Shooting Industry Magazine, and of course the various emails that we'll send out to let you all know about those upcoming webinars. But appreciate your time, and I know you're going to have a great session today. Chris and George do a great job with putting these together, and thanks to you for taking all the time to set this up. I know you've got a great program set for today. Folks, marketing, branding, advertising, it's all critical to our success. NASGW, ironically or incidentally, is also working on a great deal of new marketing and outreach efforts right now. Maybe you've seen our new Insights newsletter. We're changing to a bi-monthly, working on some additional content changes. We've changed the look and feel of NASGW logo, and we'll be doing some other changes to our websites and that sort of stuff here in the coming days, just to kind of give ourselves a refresh as well. I think it's important to always kind of take a look at that. We'll have a new NASGW Expo website in mid-April, where you'll be able to get registered and find information for the Expo coming up at the end of October this year in Kansas City. That new Expo website is a whole it's just a transfer of all of our information on the old site, and then giving it a whole new look and feel. So we're really excited about that. We'll add some new content there as well, but really a lot more user-friendly, easier website to use. And so we've got a busy year in the industry this year, critical for our future that we as NASGW members and all of our partners come together to work together and help this industry survive what could be pretty interesting politically and otherwise. But today the focus is on marketing, advertising, some critical things to help you have a successful year in this critical year, as busy as it's going to be. And I look forward to hearing from Chris and George and all of our panelists, and really appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today. That's it, Chris. Thanks so much. And if anybody needs anything, please reach out to me afterwards. You can find my email address on the website or get the information, Chris.
Great, Kenyon. Hey, thank you. Thanks, NASGW. And let's get started. Today, the goal is to share with you, we will call some best practices, but more real-life experiences on how you can improve your marketing and advertising. We're changing it up a little bit in some of the terms of the webinars done in the past. We've done a lot more presenting. This year, we're going to actually have more of an interactive discussion, almost like a radio show, as we'll call it. We'll kind of lead this and then bring in our guest speakers to comment on it. Just so those listening know what the audience looks like, because you can't see them. We get about 70% of the audience is in the marketing, marketing manager, advertising, sales and marketing, something like that. And then 30% of you are presidents, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, more of the general operations. That's kind of the breakdown. And there's a good 90% that are manufacturers. And there's a few distributors there, but mostly on the manufacturing side. What we're going to do from an agenda perspective, let's talk about, before we get into the details of this, defining your goals, what are you trying to accomplish, understand your audience, talk about differentiation. This is something that I know George and I will push a lot on today. Then we'll get into the best practices. So the best practices that's to be found out, and then measuring results. Today, when we talk about marketing and advertising, there's a whole bunch of different channels and customers. We're talking about the end consumer, the dealer, the distributor. Today's focus really is going to be on the consumer. And you'll hear from CrossBreed, which does most of their marketing and advertising directly to the end consumer. So that's kind of the focus for today. And then from an interactive perspective, again, if you have questions, please ask them along the way. Quick intro on myself and George. I am the better looking one on the left. Been doing this for about 30 years. Actually started with Sturm Ruger, coming out of college as an engineer. Then got into the consulting world and started Growth Strategy Partners in 2003, really to help privately held companies, specifically in the shooting sports, grow their business more efficiently and more effectively. We'll talk a lot about that today. I'm also a shooter, a competitive shooter, hunter. In fact, I'm going to a 3-gun match in Mesa, Arizona later this week. If anyone's going to be there, come look me up. George?
Well, I been in the business since the early 70s and retired a couple of times. I retired from the Sig Sauer Academy in 2011 and formed International Firearms Consultants. Prior to that, Chris and I had some relationship through the FBI Citizens Academy, and we have common interest in the firearms end of things. So we decided to consolidate our efforts and do some work in the firearms industry. And up to this point, we've got over 20 companies that we work successfully with in the firearms business, and we want to continue that business as long as we're still having fun doing it. My lot in life is to have fun and enjoy, and working with firearms and people in the firearms business accomplishes that.
Thanks, George. Quick overview on what we do as part of Growth Strategy Partners. I mentioned as a consulting firm, really focused on the shooting sports industry. Kind of what's unique with us, with George in particular, and I, is the background in the shooting sports, but the focus on growth and what we call these 7 keys to growth. This is some research we've done to identify how do you grow a business more efficiently, more effectively. Today, we're talking about marketing and advertising. Really fits within this advanced customer management key. In terms of what do you have to do in that segment to really be efficient and grow long term. And as George mentioned, the 20 or so customers, there's about a bunch of them there on the bottom that we've worked with. I'd like to now introduce one of our guest speakers, Roy Huntington. He wanted us to make sure you knew he was the one on the right here in this picture. He's the editor of American Handgunner and the publisher of FMG Publications. Roy, you there?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that, and thanks for putting that that caption there on the photo.
And you've got 2 dogs, so hopefully one of them's not slighted here.
Yeah, they're Australian Shepherds, and they're smarter than I am. So, hey, thanks for the invitation, and hello, everyone. I'm a old retired cop who went to his first SHOT Show in 1987 and have been covering the industry and a freelance writer ever since then. And for about the past 30 years, I've either been an editor or on the masthead, and I've been with FMG for about 15 years. So during that career, I owned a police equipment company. I was the LE sales manager for Bianchi. I was their marketing manager, and then went on from there to on the editor side of the house. And so it gives me a unique perspective. There's a lot of people out there who are way smarter at this than I am, but I do know our readers, and our readers are your customers. And so hopefully we can help to get you connected a little better today.
I think we thought that would be a great insight, again, getting both the online print perspective and then also someone that's been doing it for a while and been fairly successful at it. So I'd like to introduce Trent and Nathan. Thanks for joining us today. You guys both there?
Yeah, we're here. Nice to be on here, Chris. Thank you for inviting us. Obviously, you've got the wrong picture of me up there on the left. That's not the picture that I took, but anyways, gosh, I've from listening to the experience here, I'm a baby in the industry. Been with CrossBreed for about 6 years. Just having a great time learning this industry and enjoying the partnerships that's been at CrossBreed and out in the industry.
Nathan?
Yep. I actually, like Trent said, we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody today. Kind of like Trent, I've only been in this industry for about 10 years now total. I was a retail manager at a local store, and then worked my way into CrossBreed and customer service, and then have been with the company full-time for about a year now in my current position. So definitely want to elaborate on what Trent said. The relationships that we've made with especially some of our advertisers have been just amazing.
So Trent sent us a picture of Brad Pitt, I believe. Is that the one you wanted us to put up there?
That was actually me, that I look like Brad Pitt. But
okay. And the interesting here with these two, having spent some time with both Trent and Nathan, is, and I guess they'll say, you'll hear about this later, you've got kind of an older school on the Trent side and the younger, generation with Nathan. So maybe we get some different perspectives on that. So appreciate you both for being here. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk about goals. So let's first, before we jump into actually advertising, marketing, some of the best practices there, I think we need to talk about what your goals are. What are you trying to accomplish? And, from a growth strategy partners perspective, any goals on the advertising and marketing side really should come from the company side. What are the goals of the company? Are you trying to get new customers? You're trying to get increased sales from existing customers? Is there certain products you're trying to grow or focus on? When we put goals for organizations, we put them into these kind of 4 buckets from a financial perspective: customers and products, operations, and then people. It's actually a best practice balanced scorecard approach. And then from that, on the customer product side, is where you'll see this marketing and advertising. So kind of the first point, we'd like to make is, have you defined your company goals? Have they then been translated into customer and or product goals before you get into, say, the marketing and advertising goals? And then the question is, what are the marketing and or advertising goals? And then the big piece of that is the assumptions people put around them. Too often, there's a lot of discussions around the table about what you should do and how you're going to get there, but the assumptions aren't necessarily documented. One of the things that we found is very, very important, regardless of what goals you set, are the assumptions that you define behind it. When a company's been growing, you take what's been going on in our industry, for the last 3 or 4 years with this roller coaster up or down. A lot of the questions is what's going to happen this year. It's an election year, Democrat versus Republican. We're going to have another, Paris or San Bernardino. What's that going to do? What are your assumptions when you start putting goals around the company, products, and the customer, and then down to advertising? What we found is what companies have done in the past is they've had this historical growth rate. And again, nothing's necessarily linear like this, but let's say it's a 7 or 8, 10% average growth rate on the revenue side for the last X number of years. Then all of a sudden they put goals out that end up here in this higher planned or hope perspective. And there's really nothing defined behind that. Where'd that come from? So if you look at what the projected growth rate would be historically with what a lot of companies say, oh, this is what we're going to do, we talk about a squeeze play. We talk about taking what you think your historical projection would be and then what you're going to try to accomplish and find something honestly in between the two. But get some definition about what you're assuming is going to happen. When we ask companies, when you look at this new trajectory, and we say, well, what's going to change? And usually don't get great answers. So let's dig into specifically about goal setting here. I'm going to start with Trent and Nathan from CrossBreed. Does CrossBreed have some defined goals, whether they be at the corporate side or at the customer product side? How do you set them? Why don't you give us a little insight on that, Trent and Nathan?
Yeah, Chris, on a large scale, obviously, at first of the year or prior to the first of the year, obviously we'll start looking at what we want to do, what we want to accomplish throughout that year, whether it be sales, whether it be adding departments, whatever the case may be. In this case, Nathan's currently working on a new website for us. I think goals are set in every aspect of the company, whether it be a new product, whether it be as small as just a monthly promotion or anything like that. We'll sit down and go, okay, what do we want to accomplish? What's the end result? And it's more of a team effort, obviously, as we know. One person can't just sit down and say, hey, this is what I want. I think as you start those goals, it goes into each department, and after you all come together, you've got that one goal in mind.
I know, talking to you, you have goals, I know, on the production side. Do you establish goals specifically on the customer side at all, or from a marketing advertising perspective, whether it be, some of the metrics you may be following?
We do. As far as actual sales goals, when it comes to if you're going to look at daily sales, I mean, the metrics that we do track are obviously our daily sales and how that relates to the number of orders coming in, and we'll look at that throughout the year. And again, that's where we come in and say, we need to we need to change this goal, or we need to maybe take one of those goals that we set at the first of the year and adjust that to where our sales are at throughout that year.
Chris, too, one of the things that we've learned is that setting goals in this industry can be difficult. As you mentioned earlier, when you have shootings and things like that, you can obviously have these huge peaks and valleys throughout your, sales season. And so one of the things that we've tried to do really is look at our goals and reverse engineer those goals back. Don't start at the bottom and work your way towards the goal. Start at the goal and figure out how you work your way towards it. And, a lot of that involves, obviously, your analytical data and a lot of A to B testing, too. Just because something you think looks right and looks correct, if your customers aren't interacting with it, then you're flat out wrong.
Big maybe a theme we'll talk about today is marketing as itself as a test, right? You're running a lot of tests through different channels, different approaches, and see kind of what works, which might then feed back to those goals that you've established. We could literally spend hours alone on goal setting, but we're not going to do that today because we've got other things we're going to talk about. I do want to ask Roy. Roy, when people come to you, when companies come to you, do they talk to you about goals? Do they talk about it at that level, or they just jump in and say, I want some print ad or online? Or how does that work with you, and what would you advise before people even came to you and started talking about what to do?
I think those in the marketing department and even some of the company hierarchy will not be surprised when I say you would be amazed at the number of even major companies who are very erratic in their goal setting and often don't have any goals or even really any direction. I'm always amazed when I have a company who comes to me and says, hey, we'd like to put some ads in your magazine. And I say, why? And they really don't know why. And they really don't have any idea what they want to accomplish. And I know it sounds very surprising, but we're all adults here, and I'm going to be blunt with you, and it's absolutely the case. And so what we generally do, fortunately, we have a pretty savvy sales staff, is that we try to help them set some goals and help them set a direction. And the other thing that we always see a collision with are the bean counters who say, hey, we were up 30% last year, so we're probably going to be up 45% this year. And then they set that level of expectation, and they look at marketing. And if you have someone who's been in the industry for 30 years in marketing, they're going to look at that, and they're going to say, your goals are unrealistic. And I wouldn't anticipate that if I were you. And then there's that you really can be a big collision. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has had to live through that in the past.
That gets into this comment, where you talk about the squeeze plate chart here, but we hear that a lot and we see that a lot where, well, I've been growing at 12%, 15%, whatever it is, so I know it's going to continue. And I'm sure everybody here listening, has realized it hasn't happened in 2010, 11, or end of 14, early 15, because things don't continue like they've been in the past. And I think a lot of the big question is, what's 16 going to look like? What's 17 going to look like? This is why we talk a lot about, defining your assumptions. And so Roy, that's great. The only thing I'm going to have a contention with is if you start helping people set goals, you're really taking away from our consulting services. So I'd ask you not to do that too much. Okay.
Well, the first thing we do is we say, find yourself a good consultant.
Okay, thanks. One question I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the audience right now. We're going to get off goal setting, but before we get into the next topic, which is customer targeting, there's a question about marketing expenses and advertising expenses as a percentage of sales. So you should be seeing a survey question, a poll question now that says, what percent of your sales, what percent of 2016 sales is going to be allocated towards marketing and advertising? Not throwing in the sales piece here, but really more directed at the marketing and advertising. So if everyone would just click on one of those. We actually threw in the I don't know at the end here, thinking that some people might not actually have that at their fingertips. But it'd be nice to talk about what percentage of sales, what percentage of sales is being targeted towards the advertising and marketing. We got a good number of people already voting, so it'll take about another 10, 15 seconds, and then we're going to wrap it up. And what I'll do is everyone will see these answers, and then I will ask Trent and Nathan, if you want to share a range of what you're doing, and then I'll ask Roy, some reaction to that. So let me close this up, and I'm going to share. Let me write it down before I do. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and I'm going to show it to everybody. So you should see now that 55% is up to that 3.9%, which is the largest. You kind of skip over that 4 to 7%. The next group in 25% is in the 7 to 10 range. 0 over 11%, and then 15% say I don't know. Trent, Nathan, do you guys fit in one of these? How do you define what percentage of sales you put towards, or percentage of advertising and marketing you put in the budget?
Without having the exact number right here in front of me, I'm going to go on the high end of the 4 to 6.9%. Would probably be where we fall at. When we look at that every year, we sit down and go, here's what we did last year, and a very, very good, smart gentleman that I went to work for here about 6 years ago, always believed in keeping your name out there and trying to increase your budget every year. So we look at that, and if we've got room for it and we can increase it, we'll increase it.
Okay. What I'm going to do, just because of time, Roy, is I'm going to hold this one and move on to our next topic. I think that should be closed. People should be back to seeing the chart. Great. Let's talk about targeting customers, specific customers. So you may have set some goals. Now, before we get into the details of the advertising and marketing, who are we targeting? This is something that I'll be honest, when we walk the SHOT Show and we talk to our customers and we ask them, well, who are you targeting with your advertising and your marketing? And we get really weak answers. This is a sample here of some demographics you can go after. But the question would be, to our listeners, who is that, marketing campaign, advertising campaign specifically going after? There's a lot of new shooters, especially on the female side. But are you building ads or campaigns to target everybody? In which case you fall into the classic that's mentioned in our industry, the shotgun approach versus the rifle approach, or you're being more specific. I'm going to start with Roy. Roy, I think we talked a little about your demographics, your audience, online and offline. You know your customers fairly well, I assume. Is that correct?
We do. We have the luxury of doing a Gun of the Month program where we award a gun to entries to readers every month. And so we can call their information, because part of the process of logging in to sign up for it is that they have to complete a small survey, and that survey changes all the time. And so from simple questions like how often do you shoot, do you reload, do you go to a public range, that kind of stuff. And we can get more specific. You buy folding knives, what kind do you buy? And so we've grown a wealth of information about that to where we have a really good handle on our demographics. But something I think is really important for potential advertisers, and this has to do with any magazine that they're going to go into, is that you do have to know what your demographics are, and then make sure you tie those in correctly to the magazine that you're looking at. And with a lot of magazines today, they're becoming increasingly vertical. They're more like Handgunner as opposed to Guns magazine. And so if you're doing handgun accessories, I think it's critical that you identify your market and then go after the media that caters to that market. And you will be amazed at the number of companies that don't take the time to think about that. And actually, we have the information and can supply it to them if they ask for it.
How many come to you, Roy, and say, geez, we're really looking to target this group, this segment, this age, this demographic? How many of them have that? And is it more the larger companies rather than the smaller ones?
It's virtually always the smaller companies, and it's usually younger people who understand the internet and understand the term metrics and things like that. Usually the larger, older companies are more like Ford in that they tend to just build brands as opposed to going after specific markets and targeting specific products to specific people. And the smaller companies can't afford to do that. A smaller company can't afford to buy a full page ad that says, oh, we make holsters. And so usually, but I think in that situation, if they do, if they target the market and if they have a call to action for the customer, that's when I find them to have the most success. And especially when they put their ad in the correct magazine.
You help them with choice of the magazines, I would assume.
Absolutely, yeah. And we tell them, American Handgunner isn't a magazine for you. You need to be in this other one, shooting, or guns or something. We always try to help them.
Nathan, Trent, do you define your target customer, your segment, or I guess maybe how defined you do that, and then when you build ads, are they targeted at certain segments?
Yeah, Chris, really we found that we kind of take a multi-phase approach to that. I mean, obviously there's some publications out there that are very general, so we try to serve just our ad that we feel covers the best demographic for that magazine. We obviously pay a lot of attention to our analytical data from the site to be able to identify our best demographics. When it comes to social media, for example, we will write ads that are specifically targeted at maybe female shooters. Even we get into like our dealer program right now, we're able to write ads specifically targeted at states in particular that we're looking at. And so we found really that being able to narrow down your demographic and target your advertising against that demographic helps your conversion rates just to convert at a lot higher level. Being able to associate that customer with the product in particular that they're looking for is always going to convert higher than associating maybe, like a female shooter with a picture of a male shooter. So we found that to work really well for us.
It's I guess to those listening, my question to you would be, how well defined is your target customer, your segments? Which segments are they? Whether it be a male, female, age group, competitive shooting, preppers here, whatever the case may be. And usually what we suggest, especially since we've got mostly sales and marketing folks here, is, and they generally know the answer better than others in the company, but to go ask other people in the company. Go ask the CPA, go ask the accountant, do they know, who your target customers? This is something that most people should know. Customer service would be a great one to ask since they're on the phone all the time. In fact, Roy, as you were talking, I know one of the best practices out there with some organizations outside of the industry is when you call them, the first thing to do is verifying your information to make sure they have it right. This is kind of a simple thing without getting into the details of, what type of customer they are. So let's move on to why is differentiation important? Actually, George is going to talk about this one.
Well, I'm going to spend a little bit of a short period of time on it. The thing that I experienced as one of the founders of the 6 Hour Academy is that we had competition from Smith & Wesson, we had competition from Glock, we had competition from H&K, and all of us were targeting the law enforcement and military market, and that was a fairly narrow market, and it was fine as long as we were a cost center. But when they shipped us over to the profit center side of things, we had to scramble for a little bit of extra business. So we had to drill down and see where our customers might come from, and we looked at disposable income, and disposable income came from the commercial side, not the law enforcement and military side. So we started a civilian side of training there, and we pretty well capitalized on that. And then we looked a little deeper into that and got into the women's only training, and we were the first academy that focused on women exclusively. We had women instructors, women students. It was nothing but women, no men allowed for the first couple of classes, and that differentiated us from all the rest, and we captured that business 100% for a long period of time. And of course, that helped the branding of the company. It helped to expand the name, and the quality of the training transitioned over into the quality of the gun, therefore cross-selling, and generated quite a bit of revenue. Totally successful all the way across the board. I will have to say that we did try a shotgun approach early on, and that was basically useless. We had to focus on specific areas. And again, the target was disposable income, and then segments within that disposable income that got us where we needed to be.
So you took a combination of both two questions there answered. I guess one was the segmentation, who you went after, and then differentiation was why SIG. And those two things in combination were much more successful than your quote-unquote shotgun approach you did earlier without doing those two steps, I guess, in the program. Is that right?
Absolutely. And part of the plan that we worked with, with the civilian folks and with the women, and that we focused on and the rest of the industry followed, was just simple stuff like fitting the gun to the hand of the shooter. Why was that important? And it obviously made sense. It was not arguable, and was easy to reproduce. So the success rate of the students coming out of our academy, civilian-wise as well as law enforcement and military, was greater than the other competitors. So the repeat business kept coming because we were able to differentiate why we were different or better than going somewhere else.
This is something, we mentioned at the beginning, I personally have a little pet peeve on, and something actually I do at every SHOT Show or any SGW show the expo that we go to is just to walk around and ask, rifle companies and handgun companies or lights manufacturers, so what's so special about, your product? How's it different? And 99% of the time we get a weak to no answer. They start showing the features of the gun, but not why it's special or why it's different. What's it mean to me? And, just recently now, the last NASGW Expo and the SHOT Show, the big surge on ammo companies is what we're seeing now. And we ask the question, and we don't get a good answer. And if you can't differentiate your product, then how can you actually advertise or market for it? So this is why, again, big pet peeve about, how important it is to be able to differentiate your product, your service. The good news is that when we've done this, when we've had conversations with companies and start peeling back, say, the onion on how different their products are, or you really get some good answers. So it's just a matter of spending some time to be able to do that. Nathan and Trent, how do you differentiate CrossBreed holsters?
I'll start again with what Nathan said. We're looking at different ads, creating different ads, really pointing out those features of the holsters and what makes them better. We've talked about that, Chris. You and I have talked about that. And really pointing out to the customer what makes that better. As far as, I'm going to jump into a little customer service part here. When we speak with customers, whether it be via email, phone calls at NRA show, USDCA show, that's where we can really get our point across to the customers. And once we get them, let me start over here. We have a very loyal following out there, and once that starts, we get those customers out there telling their buddies, their family. We have some generations here of people calling in and ordering holsters. People turning of a certain age, and they're able to carry, and that goes a long way. So it all starts with the ads, with what Nathan does, social media, with what we do with the print ads, and really getting that point across. It's not just pointing that or making that one statement on an ad. It encompasses the entire part, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I know, you and I have had some discussions about, CrossBreed holsters and the handcrafted handmade, and honestly, my belief, the need to get that out there more. I mean, being a concealed carry holder, and carrying CrossBreed along with some other holster manufacturers, and being an engineer, being an anal engineer for that matter, I really take things apart. And I think we've, peeled back the CrossBreed a few layers, that there's even more value there that can be communicated. You're doing a great job, as shown by a lot of the metrics we'll see later. But it's tougher these days, I think, to differentiate yourself, to get the word out. And therefore, companies have to be that much better in how they differentiate their product. And when we hear, oh, made in the USA, or it's quality people, quality this, quality that, you hear that all the time. So just the need for companies to be able to, I say, peel this back a few layers and really differentiate or really define, why is your product so different, okay? Here's a little list we put together on ways that you can differentiate your product. Not going to go through them all, just something to put in front of you. And before I move on, I'll ask Roy, what have you seen? Where have you seen some good differentiation? There's some companies, ads, marketing messages that come out that you think do a great job at differentiating their product?
Well, Chris, you have to keep in mind is that what we do in the media is find out why different products are unique. In other words, our readers rely upon my writers in order to tell them what's unique and interesting about product A as opposed to product B. So what we do is just that. And frankly, most of my guys are really skilled at it. I've had a lot of manufacturers call me later after they see an article and they say, hey, can I use some of this? You guys really thought of things that we never even thought about. Applications for our product and techniques to use our product that we never even thought of before. So I think that's another way that you can reach out and start a team with who you're doing your advertising with. The other thing, though, and I think you bring up a very important point here, and that there's a couple of ads, I think, in the display later on you could show if you don't mind, and that is that while a lot of companies, and it's basic marketing 101, but I see this mistake constantly, is that they will advertise a product and it has stainless steel and it's got a light and it's got rubber grips. And then they leave it at that. And the problem is your customers don't understand why that matters. So they have to have the benefits. And you see all those features. You said it earlier. They start telling you all about the features of their rifle, for instance, but they're not telling you why that's important. And people miss that constantly. So stainless steel so it doesn't rust. A laser sight or a light so you can see in the dark, and rubber grips so the gun doesn't slip in your hand. When suddenly your customers understand that and they say, hey, I don't want my gun to slip in my hand. I want to buy those rubber grips.
Huge. I mean, I don't know about you and all the listeners, but how often do we see that ad of the tactical operator with the gun, the handgun, the long gun, the glasses, the holsters, and I'm trying to figure out what are they actually selling?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's one of the things I'd like to say is you need to back this stuff up too. Just because you say it so doesn't mean anything. You've got to have some testing or some kind of real world experience to back up what your claim is, because people will call you on it, like, well, why is your gun more accurate than, the other gun? And if you, can't provide some data on that, you just lost it. So you got to be able to back this stuff. It's what, why, and how. What are we talking about? As Roy says, why is this important? And even more is how we prove that or how it works. So if you keep what, why, and how in mind when you're talking about differentiation of characteristics, you'll be on a pretty good path.
May I add, George, I hear readers constantly. They write to me directly. I answer the phone and I talk to them and I answer the emails personally. And they are not afraid to tell me exactly what they think about the products that they see in our magazine. And I think sometimes that undiluted open-mindedness comes through to me, but I'm not sure that they think they can reach out and tell advertisers and manufacturers that.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to last two topics we're getting into, which is how do you accomplish these goals? Quick slide showing how we break it into three channels or three segments: the in-person, where you might have events or at the dealer location or at shows or matches; the mail or print category in the middle; and then online. And at the lower right there, you got that bunch of cubes. That's all the social media. If anybody can actually identify all those, thank you. But how do you go to market is really, and create these ads is really kind of where we're getting to now. The things that we'd like to share is, the messaging has to be clear and then consistent, so that I think I heard once, someone needs to hear something 7.4 times for it to sink in. Okay, and that therefore would be the same message over and over again. I'm going to go back to Roy. You were talking about some ads, and you were referring to some pictures we have a little later here. Do you want to share some of the ones that you think have been successful that you liked, and then we'll talk to CrossBreed?
Yeah, absolutely. If you could flash them on the screen now. Now, these people who are tuned in now, there's a lot of really senior people, and I'm sure this isn't new to them. Now, these are just the little bits of ads I pulled out of the magazine. Quickie screenshots. They're not the whole ad, but I wanted to show you that. It says, okay, critical defense from Hornady tells you it's optimized for this, and it's in a bullet, unlike conventional hollow points. But you notice that they're saying, well, what does that mean? It won't clog when fired through clothing. And the critical duty, it tells you a little bit about it, and it says it delivers barrier blind terminal performance when shot through urban barriers. They're telling you that our ammunition looks like this and is built like this because it does this. And then you go to the next slide if you would. And pepper blasters stops threat at a distance. Well, good. Now I know what it does. It's the most effective, less lethal product. It tells you exactly what they do, and there's no better way to stop a threat at the distance. And the beauty of this is a reader who's sitting there looking at this, or your customer, is going to say, hey, I want to stop threats at a distance, and so I'm going to buy one of those. So the next one, please, if you would. But see, it would be really easy to say, the pepper blaster is really good. It has OC spray, and then stop. Now, this one here is really interesting. It's a very small advertiser, but this is a way of telling your features and benefits without saying anything, is that my feature is I have a really big rear sight on this gun with a bright red dot, and the benefit is, look, I can see it on the target. So he actually did it without hardly saying anything. So those are very simple things. I can't remember if we have any more there, Chris.
One more.
There's a really basic one here. Ergonomic fit feature, why? For more control. Okay, precision built, who cares? Well, it's because it's more accurate. And most, or a lot of ads you'll see simply say ergonomic fit, precision built, stainless steel. Nobody cares. You have to tell me why that's important. And I hear that from my readers constantly. Thanks, Chris.
It's interesting. We did some work for a company making ARs, and they were doing a market research project. Actually, so it was a company that was thinking of getting into the AR or modern sporting rifle category. And, so we did some research, because our first question was, well, why do people buy them? And, the National Shooting Sports Foundation has a good research study on the modern sporting rifle, talks about accuracy and reliability being some of the top two reasons why people buy. What's interesting to me is that I rarely see that in ads for long rifles, for ARs, and you hit upon this. It's not the stainless steel. It's the corrosion resistance. It's the what's in it for me. Do you have Roy, a bias on more words, less words? Some of these had a little more words than others. This one's pretty short. Do you have a rule of thumb at all?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It depends on your dynamics of the reader. American Handgunner is pretty vertical, so my guys are very motivated. They shoot, they hunt, they collect, they reload, they compete, they read every ad, they do all that. They don't mind a little more information, but having said that, you also can get lost in the gray text on the page. And so I personally think, and from talking with the advertisers, that the minimalist way is better, but not too minimal. In other words, a simple, your company name, an image of the product, features and benefits, clear contact information, and then a call to action. call now for more information, call to get your 10% off coupon, something like that. You have to, because what happens is these people read this and it's not personal to them unless they see the benefits that they're looking for. I want to protect my family just like that. I want to light up the hallway at nighttime. I want my gun to be more accurate. And then how do I do that? So tell them how to do that in the ad. That's very important.
Let me, before I go to Trent and Nathan, let's talk about the channels. You know, you've got a large print channel from the magazine perspective. You also have an online channel. Tell me about, you know, what's going on with print these days. I mean, I'm sure there's some listeners going, geez, you know, print sold. It's all about the new social media. It's all about, you know, online. Give me a pro and con with both, if you would. Roy? Who's Roy?
Oh, yeah, I thought
working the mute button, right?
Yeah, I apologize. You know, it's interesting. What we've found out is that they really all do work in together. We went and started publishing our digital edition simultaneously with the release of our print edition 6 or 7 years ago. Well, and so what we do is when the printed edition hits the stands, we simultaneously put a PDF, the exact same PDF, online on our website of that edition. So theoretically, nobody has to buy the print magazine. They can just go online and look at it. And we thought this was either the most brilliant thing we've ever done or was the most ridiculous, stupid thing we've ever done, and I would be looking for a job. Well, we found out that in actuality, they really work together, is that people are driven from that digital edition to subscribe to the magazine, and then they use the digital edition and the online features they get exposed to online ads, but they use the digital edition as sort of an archive and a place to do research. And so what we're finding out is with Facebook, Instagram, and print and our online presence is that they are all ultimately learning to play well together. And I think we also have to keep in mind that the demographics of the baby boomers, you know, we've still got another 20 or 30 years left, and we all like print, and we can't get around that. And you need to remember that. So
interesting. Okay. I'm going to jump over to the old man, the older man and the younger man. But before I do mention, we've got about a little over 10 minutes left. We've actually been answering a lot of the questions that have been asked along the way. If listeners have some more questions they'd like to ask, again, just type it into the box and we'll get to it right here at the end. Nathan, Trent, tell us about how you go to market from a channel perspective of these 3 channels per se, or segments. How do you decide how much to use on I know you do print, I know you do online, you've got your own website. How do you decide where to spend the money first, and then maybe some approaches you use in each of those channels?
Excuse me. You know, as far as deciding, you know, where we go with, again, that's a prior year budget meeting, looking at print, looking at social media, looking at TV, looking at radio, and decide what we're going to go with each one of those channels. Regarding print, yes, I'm the old man, and I still say print's very valuable out there. And we just have to decide, you know, there's so much print out there. We just have to sit back and learn to say no to a lot of it and really focus on where we think we're going to get the best return of investment, like FMG publications, like NRA publications, so on. And really what we're finding is once we get that set, that print ad will in turn drive directly to the social media part and to the website. So I'm going to turn that over to Nathan from that point.
You know, really, Chris, one of the things that we've been able to find as we talk about kind of our old man, young man conversations is that if we use our print media in particular as a branding utility, and those customers associate our business with that print, it kind of gives our customers a feel that our business is established and trustworthy because we obviously are in these major publications. Now, obviously, print media is difficult to drive to the actual website. And with us being an online-based business, that becomes difficult. So what we found the best way to do is we use our print media for branding, and then we continue to follow that branding up with constant advertisements in various places, websites, blogs, especially our social media channel, and we use that to actually drive them to the site and then convert. So the two work really well together. It's just finding the happy medium between branding and actually driving them to the site.
And is there a happy medium?
It's a very fluid environment. A lot of times we'll sit back and say, wow, we ran this article in FMG and looked at the traffic that came from this, this website in particular that they ran this banner on. And a lot of times we'll sit back and say, no, look at what Facebook produced for us with this ad here. We were able to target that demographic down so specific that our conversion level was through the roof. So I think a lot of that is just having that good team in place to be able to sit down and discuss those and make them work together. Sometimes, obviously, print and online don't always want to work together, and so it's finding a way to force them to work together, and we've so far been very successful with it.
Well, and too, Chris, it is, as we all know, it's very hard to measure what you truly get out of print. But with those two working together, we found in the past that you end up finding out that, yes, this print ad did work. Once they cross over into the social media side from seeing that print ad, I'm going to go back to an example. We ran or had an article in a major publication about our Aries belt earlier in the year, and we found that all of a sudden we started, when that article actually finally came out, it was after we launched that belt, and all of a sudden we found a huge traffic coming in on that belt. So they do work together. Sometimes it takes a little bit for them to come together. It's just trying to really be able to measure what you do get out of the print.
What about radio TV? The question about using that. We didn't really focus on that today, but there's a question about that. I know you do podcasts. I'm not sure. Do you have TV? I think you do.
Yeah, we do. We do obviously some podcasts, and then we are a sponsor of a TV show, Trigger Time, and we also work with some other TV outlets, and then also with Mark Walters with Armed American Radio. We just find that all of these channels put together, like Nathan said earlier, really tend to benefit each other and complement each other. It's just finding that balance and how they all do work together.
So you're I don't say spreading it across all the channels, but as many channels as possible and integrating as best you can. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, very much so. Radio, for instance, with Armed American Radio and Gun Talk Radio, as we know, those directly go over into social media immediately while you're on the air with them. So that it does all end up coming together, whether it be online, whether it be print, whether it be TV. If you don't include all of those, you're going to be missing out on some areas there.
You want to talk about some of the ads you sent me here, we got about 2 minutes to talk about this, then we're going to get into measures and wrap up. But you sent a few examples. Do you want to talk about a few of these and what was
Sure,
special about it and what worked out? Yeah.
Yeah, and all of these ads are specific to promotional deals, not just the product, but actual promotions. This was our December deals. We had one deal a week running up through Christmas and the week after Christmas. And your slide earlier said consistency, and as you flip through these, you will see it was very consistent throughout December running up to Christmas, that all of these ads were very consistent in what we were doing. We were plain and simple pushing product. That's what we do, and offering the consumers a deal for Christmas presents, for Christmas gifts, that type of stuff. So.
These are all December, and I think you sent me. Yeah, here we go. You had some. You do track the open rate and the click rate.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll let Nathan talk about that.
Yeah, Chris, we always try to make sure that we track our open and click rate. I know for a lot of business and marketing people, the analytical data can be very boring, but it is absolutely invaluable. When you send a campaign out, like we talked earlier, just because you think that ad looks nice or you think your customers are going to like that ad, that doesn't mean anything. One of the things we've noticed is some of our remarketing campaigns that our cost per click was a lot higher in our remarketing campaigns, and that obviously was cause for concern. But then when we looked into it, our conversion rate was also 3 times normal. So at the end of the day, if you're selling more, your cost per click just kind of becomes, it's not a concern really anymore. But yeah, we certainly do make sure that we pay a lot of attention to our analytics, especially in our email marketing campaign. Also want to say too, these ads all went out to existing customers as well. And so the customers were fairly familiar with the product already, so we didn't put quite as much emphasis in explaining why the product was more valuable. We more put emphasis in why now is a good time to purchase that product.
It's a good segue into our last topic, which is the measures, metrics. From the growth strategy partners perspective, whatever goals you set, you should have some measures or performance measures, metrics to track them. On the list here is a list of some of the ones that, from new customers, new dollars, sales, et cetera. Nathan was talking about tracking the clicks and I think the sell-through. Anything else that's important on the CrossBreed side, what you found very valuable to measure?
There's obviously a lot of analytical data there that you can go through. But yeah, I mean, you obviously want to look at what it's costing you per customer to click on those ads. And then what the conversion rate obviously is for those ads as well. Sometimes, like we discussed earlier, you'll have a little higher cost per click, but if your conversion rate is 4 times as much, then obviously you're offsetting that cost exponentially. Obviously, when you're sending out email marketing campaigns, one of the things, you say this over and over again, but it's test, test, test. It's constantly changing something and testing to see if it's better. And sometimes you feel like all I'm doing is testing and I'm never really coming up with a final product. But what we found is by constantly testing the ads, making sure they're working, checking the click-through rates, checking the open rates, we've been able to really offer ads that convert at a much higher level, which obviously increases your bottom dollar.
Let me ask one final question here to the audience, and then we're going to wrap this up. The question is, what's your top advertising or marketing challenge that you're going to face, that you are facing maybe this year? If everyone would take 5 seconds, whatever, and click off the box or check the one that you think is going to be the challenge for you. Is it developing the goals? Is it defining who your segments are? Differentiating your product? Getting a budget? I'm sure most people would say, geez, I don't have enough money. But is it really spending that money correctly? Or finding some talent? Not all of us are marketing, advertising, experts, and maybe finding people is what might be the challenge. So we click on that, and then we're going to go into a wrap-up because I've got about a minute left to go. So I'm going to basically share the results of this, and then I'm going to ask for a wrap-up from each of you of what you'd like to share with the audience. All right, so let me give me 5 seconds. And we're going to show this and see. It's somewhat not surprising that, and you'll see this here in a second. I knew when I wrote down obtaining the budget, I was going to get a lot of that score. A lot of people saying that, a lot of sales and marketing folks we talk to, quote unquote complain or whatever word you want to put about not enough money, which I think would always be the issue. But you also see, differentiating the product. It's actually great to see that. People understand that's a challenge that they have. Because we're tight on time, I'm not going to ask for any comments on this, but I am going to ask each of you, and I'll start with Roy. How would you summarize some of the key points you think people should take into account as they go forth and work on some advertising and marketing?
At SHOT Show a couple of years ago, I had dinner with a guy who was had been in our industry close to 70 years. He'd done everything. He'd wholesaler, retailer, manufacturer, importer, exporter. He's done it all. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think the best way to sell in our industry is? Should you use multiple tier distribution? Should you go dealer direct? And he looked at me and he took a sip of his bourbon and he kind of had a twinkle in his eye. And he said, you want to know how to sell in our industry? And I said, yeah. And he said, any way you can. And I realized I'd just been exposed to Marketing 101. So I think take some of what you've seen on this presentation today, but also keep your mind open and then go out there, reach out for whatever resources available and sell any way you can. Thank you.
Trent, you want to summarize something from the CrossBreed? What's the key points you want to make?
You know, one thing that always sticks in my mind is keeping your name out there. If your name's not out there, and that goes back to, well, if your name's not out there, nobody's going to see you, nobody's going to buy from you. That goes back to what I was saying about, you know, staying in all channels. You want to get your name out there in front of as many people as possible. And once you get that out there, you've got to have something, like you said, to differentiate your product. Make sure that they're coming to your website, coming to your store. Nathan?
Well, you know, for me, really, a lot of it is just engage and capitalize. Don't just throw that marketing out there. Make sure you're following up that marketing. If you run a print, a print ad, make sure that you're keeping your consistent channels across. Run that same ad on Facebook. Make posts about it. Constantly staying engaged with those customers. You build a kind of a cult following there, and when you get that following built up so high, you can really take advantage of it with your marketing campaign.
George, something you want to add?
No, we're out of time. I'll just remain silent and let you close it down.
That's a challenge for you, and I appreciate that.
I know that, and people that know me know that.
Look, I'd talk about, you see here, define your goals. The assumptions are something that we strive. Who you're trying to sell to, why is it different, and then measure results. It's really not that hard, but it is a matter of doing it. So what I'd encourage you to do here listening is to go back, refine, or take something from this, go back and maybe, whether it be the goals or differentiation, which seem to be the bigger thing, you could probably try to keep getting more money. I'm thinking you're going to have a hard time with that. But if you get better at what the money you do have, then I would assume you might get more. So let me wrap up with that. I want to say thank you to Roy. I'd like to say to Trent and Nathan, thanks for joining us. Thanks to everyone here listening. We will have another one, I think in May or June sometime. There should be a schedule on the NASGW website. And I thank everyone for attending today, and have a great day.
Thanks, Chris.